I must say, it was very wonderful talking to your cousins today. I had a very good time. I had such a good time that when I sat down, it hurt. You know what I'm saying? That's how good the day was. How do you know what that means? Look it up. You know, if you're a patriot, you tell me. Why don't you tell me why I should look that up? I have actually one interesting thing that I've realized, and I don't know where that'll take me. And then I have another thing that I thought about. And I don't know I should, but we'll see. One thing that I realized something. Okay. What myth really is. I think that there's obviously so much truth in it, and it's like, well, that's an obvious statement, right? But I thought about this, and in conjunction with something else. When we think of myths in mythology, for instance, throughout, I don't know, whatever, pick a culture, it doesn't really matter. Pick a myth. You can go Greek, you can go fucking Celtic, or fucking Arab, or whatever. Any other, Chinese or something. Pick a myth in your mind, and it's like, it sounds like that's crazy. Or maybe it sounds a little far-fetched or something, but you know there's a truth in there. You don't really know why or how, but you do know there's a truth in it. And there's such a span of time that's lost that the myth takes over. And what I was thinking was, like, what might happen. So let's just say Chernobyl. The incident in Chernobyl that happened back in the day. Was it the 80s? I can't remember. Or was it the 70s? I don't know. But Soviet Union. Disaster. Known about. Huge impact on the world that it's made. The Chernobyl incident, right? But thousands of years will go by and it might be forgotten. For one reason or another. This might be forgotten or something. Or like only a little bit will be told, because you got to remember who don't want that the information coming out. The Soviet Union at the time, so they hid a lot of real truths from it. So what really came out was the people there, most likely, or like propagandists and stuff from other countries that hate Russia. So now you have a very jaded view of what it might be. And like, let's go 1,000 years in the future, and it's like you have no context anymore. Because America's no longer this, and and Russia's no longer that. So you have zero context to it all. So now you don't really remember, as like a human race, I should say, the human race doesn't really remember exactly what Chernobyl is. But there's a weird myth about it, and it's called Stalker. You know what I mean? Like I don't remember if it was books first or something, but I know there was video games made about it. What was that movie by that Russian? Was it called Stalker? What if that survives? Because art seems to go farther because we're attracted to it. We'd rather learn more about Star Wars Lord of the Rings than we would our real life history. So the reality hides within that. Whatever author put it in there for whatever purpose. And there's like a whole avenue of purposes that it can encompass. You know, like, did he purposely sit down and make allegories like, oh yeah, I was talking about Christianity in the 1800s when I did this part, and like, that's, neither here nor there, because it's like you can't prove any of that. But whatever the person put inside of it may last throughout the generations. So people might forget about the Chernobyl incident many, many years from now, but they will know about what's become the mythology of how it might have happened, and what was going on there, and these stalkers and this weird fucking thing that might survive. And that's what myth is, right? I'm thinking, because that Stalker series, the video games, the books, and all that stuff, the movie, was inspired by the real events that happened over there. So they have some sort of truth in there, though it's a little manipulated, because like sometimes you might have something like in the game there's like anomalies and shit that would cause like mutation of animals, and it is like a whole fucking thing. I didn't really get into it myself, but I do know it is a thing. And what if that's all you knew? And you can kind of see it now with how kids, younger kids or whatever, even like teenagers and young adults, their distorted view of what history is because of like for instance, what they know about World War II might be from Call of Duty World War II or Battlefield 1. What about World War One or what? And other video games, like, it distorts their view. But that's the mythology of it, perhaps. Like, that's how it's really born. And that was just something I was thinking about, like, that's interesting that, I mean, I can't say I'll find out because it's got to be a long time past because people are alive that dealt with that. And they will be for some time. But it is interesting to think about that. Like, I wonder, like, if there is some merit to that. If there's some ultimate truth. Maybe that's what's really going on with mythology. And so you have the Trojan War, which was a real conflict between, was it the Mycenaean Greeks or... it's before the Greeks were Greeks, basically, against, like, some sort of vassals of the Hittites or something. And so it's like, and that might have really happened, but it's been mythologized in such a way over and over and over again, told. You have the mixing of the culture's media mixing with the kind of grandiose storytelling that becomes lost to time. And it's like, well, we don't remember this detail, so we're going to add that one, right? The telephone game that stories can be. So I think there's these two elements that maybe are what's going on, what can form our mythologies of the world. And the same thing with our religions too. I've been watching more stuff about religion, and it's kind of its origin, if you will, from a YouTube channel called Gnosis Informant. Gnosis, yeah, like Gnostic basically, but Gnosis or Gnostic, or maybe it's Gnostic. It might be Gnostic. It is Gnostic Informant. Gnosis is the process of it, isn't it? But yeah, and I've been learning more about kind of these origins of how it's all actually connected. It's like, this is actually from that, which is from that, which is from that, which is from that. And you go back to like Proto-European religion, and you can see these parallels from the Greeks, and then these parallels from Christianity and Judaism and all that. They're all telling the same story over and over and over and over and over again. The same fucking story. The story of Christ has happened so many fucking times. So what is that really saying? So is there a moving philosophy? Is there a moving, what's the fucking P word? Prophecy? Is there a moving prophecy that's happening over and over again throughout different people's lives and it's telling the same thing? Or are we all seeking to remember something original? And we use these stories to help us get back to that. Those are kind of elements that I often have been lately, I should say, but wondering about, and how much it connects us to some sort of truth. Because, like, as we find in the philosophy reading that we're doing, it's seeking truth, right? And sometimes the truth is unattainable for whatever reason or another. So it's like, it's either too high for us to understand, or we won't grasp the questions, or maybe we don't even know how to ask the questions in the first place. But this is part of that. It's the seeking of truth. And you'll find separation between religion and philosophy for sure, claiming different things, but in the reality, they're both searching for a hidden truth. They're searching for a purpose, an understanding, and they're seeking to learn of the world or learn of God or whatever the fuck it may be about. And it's all coming back to that event, and that's where I tie in this mythology thing. It's like, okay, so maybe these things all kind of happened, same with the religion stuff, but we're just kind of changing the story because time goes on, stories change based on cultural things. I mean, shit, think about what the fucking stories are going to be when they look at this time in history. It's going to be so fucking contorted. They're like, wow, all of a sudden, white people don't really exist that much. And they don't really have an important role. And you'll start to see this weird transition of this cultural change. And so you look at the modern culture where they're trying to oppress certain races for their own agendas. That will show through in the future. And so you got to look back and say, like, what was going on at that time during the stories and stuff. So, and you hear about the things happening with Pythagoras and and all the suppression of these philosophical people by these certain groups and stuff, it's always been a thing. And so you, like, everything about learning with, at least in my journey with philosophy, mythology, and history, and religion, it's all about hiding the reality of it. It's like everything I'm trying to find has already been kind of like, well, fuck, we had to hide it because these people didn't like it. They labeled it this, you know, they call them Nazis now or whatever. And now they say that this is a bad thing. These are racist. So we found ways so people are scared to go to it. And you'll be shunned if you do. Like, you know, that kind of bullshit. It's always been going on. It's just a different, like, outfit you put on that day when it comes to the event of history. Like, what should we shun now to hide truth? I don't know exactly what it is that's got to be hidden. I have no fucking idea. I really don't know. Like, well, for the longest time, I never really, like, truly believed in this, like, Illuminati thing, you know, or whatever they call it, enlightened ones, or subterfuge group that's hiding and manipulating society and stuff. I, you know, didn't really believe for the longest time, but now as I'm getting older and I'm slowly finding things, all I'll say is it wouldn't shock me, right, if it did or didn't exist, because it just gets to that fucking point where it's just like, of course, people are manipulating other people for gain. I don't think it's necessarily a manipulation based on anything more than control. So why does mythology have to hide? Why does religion and stuff like that? I think it's just certain people want certain control of their cattle. You know what I mean? At least the way they view their cattle. And I don't know why they feel like they have to live that way in the first place. I don't know. I think that's kind of insane to think you're enlightened more than another. I think that's kind of fucking stupid, but people are just like that, you know. It's always the weakest people that rise to the top. But isn't that what, like, what is that called? Equity really is? I just think that connection that I had in my mind about Chernobyl and the Stalker series, I could see that being a thing, just because in my mind it's like, we enjoy media more than anything. You know, we're going to tune into the next fucking, as a people, because I personally don't find this something I want to see, but people will tune into the next Marvel movie than they will, I don't know, something about history. I don't know. Maybe someone wrote a book about what they found archaeologically in Göbekli Tepe. You're going to see more people gravitate towards that. So that carries on, and the voice gets smaller and smaller with things like that. And so there's probably some sort of mixing period. But when documents are lost, that's kind of what happens. So, again, going back to the Trojan War, I mean, they're starting to believe. It was weird, like, they believed it really happened, then all of a sudden they didn't for a while, but now they do again? I don't know. But now that they're finding this evidence that this most likely happened, I mean, first of all, like, no shit. Like, duh. Like, what do you think, it's made that all up? Obviously, maybe the people weren't this divine thing that they were painted in the Iliad and the Odyssey. Perhaps not. But what really happened? What really happened? And honestly, why was their truth forgotten? I mean, you really have to try to forget something that people give a fuck about. So why? This is such a big deal. They fought this war. Was it just forgotten? So that's, you know, it's interesting to see what shapes can be behind the original story that might have happened. What kind of things might have happened that we'll never remember again, who knows? But we do have mythologies. So, for instance, another example that I can't, like, give really well, I can just kind of point it out because I'm not really, you know, a learned person like that, but I would say another important one is, like, what about the Irish origins? Like how they claimed, what was it, the 12th day Danan? And the Malaysians, the people came up from fucking after that. There's these people that came from where modern day Spain is, and they all lived there. And there was like, there's a whole story. You'll have to look into it sometime. Maybe I'll do a reading of that small Book of Invasions, it's called, just so you can kind of understand the Celtic background. But there's Celtic source out there. There's so many channels that devote themselves to it. You should look into it, like the Celtic origins. So I'll write it at the top here. I hate doing this. I'm assuming you pronounce it this way, so don't quote me on it. Tuath de Danann. Right there. Just check that out and just like look into this kind of stuff, and look into the Celtic connection to the Scythians and the Phoenicians, and their connection to the Greeks and stuff like that. It's even been mentioned through history. I believe there was a king of the Britons at that time who was writing to, I think it was Caesar, saying like, hey man, like, we both come from the same stock. I don't know why you got to come up here and pull your shit. Like, we're both the same. And he's probably mentioning this weird Scythian kind of Phoenician kind of connection, Thracian, if you will. But what really happened in Ireland? Like, what really, really happened to these people? Who were the Tuath de Danann? Really? And the thing about the Celtic peoples is, man, they were really fucking... Like, people of, like, in the African cultures think their shit was wiped out. That's nothing compared to what the Celts, man. There's, like, barely anything about them. Just revivals from the medieval era in the Middle Ages of, like, cultural things, because that's when they were seeking it again. It was suppressed fucking hard by the Christians. The Romans first with their paganism, then the Christians. It's insane. We know so much about the Vikings and all their cultural shit, but nothing next to it, very little, of the Celts. So certain stories jump out, right? And then one is the Ireland origin myth of the Book of Invasions, talking about how the people founded the land. And I don't remember the name. There's a group called the Fomorians, too. These, like, a dark group of beings. I don't know if they're like demons or what the fuck they are. And they claim they came from, like all the same peoples. The Tuath de Danann came from the same area as the other ones. Let me get the book, because I kind of remember this now. Yeah. This will be the book maybe I'll read sometime. It's called The Book of Conquests, but it's Jim Fitzpatrick. He did he's very 70s, you can tell. Look at that guy. He did a drawing. He illustrated the story of it. It's very fucking crazy, man. But before the Tuath de Danann came, I'm trying to remember the name. How do you say that? I don't know. The Fir Bolg? Fir space Bolg. And they're like somehow connected with each other, and they knew this, and they had to fight each other, and then other things happened. It was crazy. It's a really crazy, crazy story, but it's their origin story of Ireland, of Ireland. And I say it weird every time. So what truth may be within that one that we'll never know, because it's just, that's all been forgotten. But what stood? Well, the story of these heroes. That's going to last longer. People will tell those stories to each other. And then eventually someone will write it down, because the Celts were notorious about not writing anything down, which was their downfall. The Romans. Why do you think we know so much? I have a book behind me about the economics of the fucking Romans, where it goes fucking land titles, land deeds, and taxes, and trade taxes, and all. I have a book because the Romans wrote everything fucking down. Well, we know everything about the Romans, who apparently didn't exist, some people think, but they're like fucking information of like how do we tax this if it's going from Egypt and it's coming into the homeland. Well, let's talk about that. I swear to God, like, that's what happens when you write shit down. you know. Anyway, that's besides the point. The main thing is, what can we glean from mythology? And that's the whole point of it. Because I always hear all the time said that, you know, you have historical fact and truth and stuff, and that's fine and dandy. But when that's not there, all you really do have is mythology. And this, for instance, Joseph Campbell, a hero with 1,000 faces, what can we glean from each mythological story? Whether that's a story of mankind, like, you know, within ourselves, like a story that, you know, we need to follow for this reason, that reason, this reason, that, you know, whatever it is, or it's a historical story of the conquest of Ireland, or the Book of Conquest, whatever, or the story of the Greek gods and the Titans and the primordial beings, whatever they were, like Atlas and the goddess of Earth, whatever her name was again, Gaia, I don't know. Or other, you know, I don't know other ones. I just look at certain ones that I care about. So what is within that? I'm sure it varies wildly from each one, but that's just something that has been sticking in my mind, and just the truth of it all is very interesting to kind of search through. Because you will never know. Of course, you know, for the Celtic stuff, the Christianization was big fucking downfall to them. But, you know, that's just what it's going to be. I've talked about that before, Selling God. Link into the description. No, I'm just kidding. But you should check that one out too. It's not scary, I promise you. It's fine. It's called Selling God, part 1 and part 2. It's really, I notice the view count's short on that. People get scared when they see certain things. It's okay. I'm not saying anything bad in it. You know, I'm just wondering about things. But yeah, there's definitely some truth in it, and something that we can all glean from that. I really think it's very important, especially if you try to look for your own heritage and try to understand them, because you'll never know. Like, once you kind of find out where you come from, it's very hard to know what those people were. Mixing has been crazy. The human race, everybody's a mutt. It doesn't matter what country you live in, you are mixed with something. And something and something and something. There's no such thing as an original Greek anymore. There's no original Native American. Or someone that's an original person that came from, you know, I don't know, Japan. I don't know their origins. Those people are all, they've been mixed and mixed and mixed and mixed and mixed. I mean, look at Europe alone. Bunch of fucking mutts. It's like, if you live in England, you might have Norman blood in you, you might have Anglo-Saxon blood, you might have fucking Jute, you might have Viking, you might have Pict, or a bunch of different fucking other invasions that happen. You know, there might be a little bit of French in there, more modern. You know, it's, you know, there's no, like, all we are is the mess that happened behind us. And so trying to seek that out, that's where you lose it, because I can't just go to England right now and be like, guys, what are the Celts? It's just like, it's going to be so varied. And so all you have are the stories. You have this stuff. You have sources from people, and the farther you go back, the more, the closer it gets. Like, I have that book, The History of Ireland, which I'm going to get fixed soon. That's probably going to take a while, but once that's fixed, I want to do a reading of that. It's insane, man. I think it's great. But that's neither here nor there. I just think it's important to think about mythology and stuff. And you know, you can definitely find some interesting things. So if you really want to look at the origins of religion and how modern religion all kind of goes back to the Zoroastrian idea, but where does that come from? And it goes all the way back to the Proto-European. Check that one channel out I said called Gnostic Informant, and I'll put a link in the description. But or the secondary channel is called Gnostic Informant TV, I think, or something. great channel. Check that out if you want to know that stuff. If you want to know Celtic mythologies, there's another good channel called Celtic Source. Which, when it comes to that, the things I've mentioned, anything about mythology in a grand scheme of it, just check out Joseph Campbell. It's a very good way to start, just to kind of get an interest into it and dip your toe, and then you could find your avenue, and then you can go that way. You know, I don't want to pigeonhole you there. I'll remember those 3 to put in. But yeah, just some things to look at, man. Like some things you can really explore when it comes to all this. The hidden history stuff, I already told you, the Asha Logos channel is pretty damn good. I would check that out if you haven't already. They made a new video, or he did, the Asha Logos, which is pretty good. It's basically like talking about it's okay to be white, essentially. Your heritage is great. I'm like, yeah, no shit. I don't know if anyone that doesn't feel that way, but I can understand if people don't, you know. But yeah, man, just something I've been thinking about lately, and I wanted to get that out. That's been in the back of my mind. Like, I should probably say that, so I can have that, so I'll be able to remember for the future. Anyway, that's all.